Today on Mina Studio, how to make your church logo all animation-y. And Sam's back.
Hi.
Hey everybody, welcome to Mina Studio. My name is Nathan. Ronald, my technical director, is back there somewhere. And this is Sam from SmartDeZign.church. Sam, what is SmartDeZign.church?
SmartDeZign.church is a website and YouTube channel all about using the power of video to reach people for the even stronger name of Jesus. So we're all about doing tech reviews and After Effects tutorials and whatever it takes to make videos for your church. That's what we do on SmartDeZign.
So Sam is an After Effects ninja? And today he's going to show us how to do some stuff. What are you going to show us how to do?
We are going to make a church animation, church logo animation. That's what we're going to do. So let's jump into After Effects and get started. Alright, so we're going to jump into After Effects. So if you are unfamiliar with After Effects, that's okay. It is basically a motion graphics program, and if you are familiar with something like Photoshop, which most people are at least familiar with what it is, it's kind of like Photoshop, but for moving pictures instead of still pictures. I mean, that's not the best comparison, but most people are familiar with what Photoshop is. So it's actually part of the Adobe suite, which Photoshop is also into. So I completely and utterly recommend After Effects if you're not familiar with it yet. Go and check it out. I'm sure Nathan will put links down in the description for After Effects so you can check it out. But let's jump into how we're going to make this. So just a quick little animation for a church logo, Christ City Church. And we are going to start from scratch. So you can see I have all my elements in here, and when we animate this on, that's what it looks like. So first things first, what I want to do is I want to take our icon, which is our logo. I can double click that and see our logo, and it's an Illustrator file, and I highly recommend that you bring in some sort of vector file. That means you can make it super big and you're not going to lose quality. So bring in a vector file. An Illustrator file is vector, so we're going to just drag that onto our new composition button here, and that's going to create a completely new composition. I'll close these because those are my test, but that's going to make a new composition, and we'll just call this logo animation. And to do that, I just clicked and hit enter and renamed that. So the next thing that I would normally do, now I'm not going to do it in this one, but what I would normally do is I would right click and I would go to create shapes from vector layer. That's what I would normally hit, and I can hit that, and we're gonna get some sort of funkiness happening down here because it doesn't like the gradient. But what that does is it takes what would normally just be a flat Illustrator logo, and it turns it into shapes that After Effects actually understands. And we can manipulate these shapes by like double clicking, and I can move these shapes around, which we couldn't do that just on our normal logo here. This is all one piece, and I can't break it apart. So that's why we would do that normally. However, if I were to do that now, you can see that we've got some weird shapes going on in this logo. This is kind of a unique case because, see, there's so much going on here, I can't even grab what I want to grab. Like, the shape of the building's really weird, and it's going to really limit me on how I'm going to be able to animate this. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm actually going to make this from scratch. So I'm going to delete this. So we're just left with our basic logo, our Illustrator file. I'm just going to make this from scratch within After Effects shapes. So I'm going to grab my ellipse tool and just start making these circles. So I'm going to start from the middle and click and drag. Oops. Make sure your layer is not selected or it will become a mask. So make sure it's not selected and click and drag from the middle. So now we're making a circle here. So I'm going to hit Command or Control on my keyboard, and that will scale from the middle, and hold Shift down to make a perfect circle. And I'm going to line that up as close to the center as I can, and that'll work. So I'm going to just create a stroke without a fill. So I want to hit my stroke color, make sure I select this specific color, this gray color right here, hit OK, and then I'm going to go to my fill and actually hit the word fill and say I don't want any fill. So we're going to hit OK, and now let's just crank up our stroke. We want to kind of match the stroke that we have here. So in order to see that a little bit better, I'm going to hit our icon or our logo, hit T, and bring the opacity down. So now we can kind of see through it, and we can see some differentiation between our shapes and the original shapes. So I'm going to scale this down just a little bit to match. So that actually looks pretty good. That matches pretty well. So let's just call this ring 1. And then let's duplicate that by doing Command D, or you can go up to Edit and Duplicate, wherever that is, right here. And let's just scale this guy down. So I'm taking the corner here and holding Shift, and we'll place it right here. We might need to bring that stroke up just a little bit to match the back. And let's do that exact same thing again. Select this layer, duplicate, and bring this guy down, and scale up the stroke just a bit. And then one more time. The inner part is actually just a circle. It's not even with a stroke. So we're just going to make it about that size, crank the stroke all the way down to 0, and then give our stroke or our fill an actual color. And we're going to select that gray color. So we're a little small there, but let's double click that and bring that up to size. So it's not perfect, but this is just for example. When you're messing with your logo, I recommend getting a little bit more nitpicky, but this will work for now. Okay, so we have our 4 rings. I'm going to color code these as close as I can to the color that we have for this ring. So I'm going to select all of these layers and right click on the color we have here. And we don't really have a black option, so I'm just going to do sandstone. And that's just going to help me visualize what I'm working with when I'm working within my layers. Okay, so now I'm going to take my, let's go with ring 3 and duplicate that. So I'm duplicating this one. So I want to get rid of my fill, and I want to mess with, or I'm sorry, get rid of my stroke, and I want to just mess with the fill right now. So really what this is going to end up being is like a yellowish green color, and I'm just going to pick a random color for now. But we want this ring 5, we're going to rename this, but we want this ring 5 to be behind ring 3. So you can see that difference there. So it's behind ring 3. So let's just call this small circle. And then we'll duplicate that and bring it behind ring 2 and call it medium circle. So then we want to scale this up to be our medium circle. And then let's duplicate that again, bring it behind our ring 1, which is our large ring, and call this large circle. And then we have to scale it up to be our large circle. So now let's select our actual colors. Or actually, first of all, let's label these things, let's color code them so we know what we're doing here. So I'm going to select my large circle, medium circle, and small circle, and just select a green. So now we can see in our layers that these look different and they're much easier to distinguish between each other. All right, so let's actually grab the correct color now. So I'm actually going to just solo our icon here by hitting our solo button and crank the opacity back up. And if your opacity is not showing again, remember just hit T on your keyboard. That stands for transparency, and you can crank up the opacity. So then I'm going to go to my small circle and up at my fill. Even though we can't see it right now, that's okay. We're just grabbing these colors. And we want to grab it from the original, so that's why we only have this one showing right now. So our small circle will go up to fill, and we'll just grab the eyedropper and grab that color. Hit OK. And then our medium circle, we're going to do the same thing, but for the medium. And then the large, again, same thing, but we're going to hit the large circle. All right, so now we can unsolo this, and we can actually hide our back layer, and this is what we have so far, which is the exact colors we want, so we are on a roll. This is exactly where we want to be. Okay, so now what we need to do is create, I'm going to drag this to the top so we can see, we want to create the building here. So the best way that we can really do this right now is just to eyeball it. So I'm going to make sure this is not selected. Otherwise, we're going to create a mask, which we don't want to do right now. So just click in an open area. And I'm going to go to my rectangle tool. So I'm going to click and drag to kind of recreate this rectangle as closely as possible. So it's going to come past like over here where it's not showing, but that's okay. And we're just going to drop it there. So we don't want a stroke, so we're going to leave that stroke at 0, but we want to set our fill to the same color as our stroke for the rings. So I'm going to select that and hit OK. And now I want to create those windows. So I'm going to hide this layer real quick. So I just want to focus on these windows. And let's start making the windows with our rectangle tool. So I'm going to click, oops, I want to make sure that's not selected here. So we can make new layers. And I'm going to click and drag. And I'm actually going to hold down Shift so I can make a perfect square. And I'm going to set it as that. And before I do anything else, before I duplicate these squares, I want to make sure it's the right color. So I'm going to go to Fill and grab my eyedropper and select the right color and hit OK. So now I can duplicate this. So I can actually name this window. We'll name it window 1. And then we'll duplicate this, bring this down, duplicate both these windows. Make sure our layers are in order. Bring these down. And then let's duplicate these 4. And bring these over to match about here. And then let's actually hide our original logo and bring back our building shape. All right, so we are getting closer. So what I want to do next, and we'll rename this building shape. What I want to do next is kind of group the whole building layer here. So I want to select all of these windows and the building shape and go to composition, or sorry, layer, pre-compose. So we'll just name this building comp and hit OK. So now the building and all of the windows are in its own little comp. And if we go back to our logo animation, it actually just looks like one layer, which is kind of nice. So let's just set this to a different color. It really doesn't matter. We'll say blue. So now if I move this around, it's moving all of these around. And if I create a mask, I'm creating it on one layer. So that's affecting all the windows and everything, which is actually what we're going to be doing. But that's why we did that. So let's actually make a layer mask. So I'm going to go up to Layer, New, Solid. And we're just going to make it solid. It really doesn't matter what color. It can be pink, red, whatever. But make sure it's something that's not like green or black or yellow, something that we're using in this scene, something that's going to stand out. So I'm going to say red and hit OK. And we'll just hit T on our keyboard and bring the opacity down just a bit so we can look through this layer. So now I basically want to trace out the areas that we want to be able to see this shape, this building. So I'm going to grab my pen tool, and if that didn't make sense, you'll see what I mean. I'm going to grab my pen tool, and we're going to start at the bottom here of this building and kind of work our way up where we think the ring is going. So I'm kind of imagining it here, and we can tweak it later. And then I'm going to grab this handle, grab this handle and bring it down and go straight out right above that window, and then kind of come up this way. Okay, so we want it to show all the way around here. So I'm just going to bring the pen tool up here and then back down to this point. So this is just kind of creating a rough shape where we want this to show up. So now if we go into our building composition and go make sure that your red solid that we just created is above your building composition, right above it. So if you go to your building composition and go to your track matte, and if you don't see that, just hit toggle switches and modes. Go to your track matte and set that to alpha matte. So now, actually, it looks kind of weird because our red solid's opacity is down, so let's crank that up. But now what we're seeing is it's only showing where that red solid was. And we can tweak this, obviously. So if we take this and just bring it in just a bit to kind of mask that line there. And that looks a little bit better, a little bit more clean. And yeah, I think that's working well. Okay, so now what we can do is if we go back into our building comp, and actually I'm going to make all these windows just a child of this building shape by selecting all of them and then hitting our parent pick whip and putting it on building shape. So now when I hit the building shape, all the windows move around with it. So let's set a keyframe at about 1 second or so and hit P on the keyboard, hit this stopwatch to enable keyframes and move to the beginning, this 0 second mark, and then just pull this down. And I'm going to hit shift so it snaps to go straight down, and we'll bring it down to about here. So now if I play this back, it's just a simple animation of this building moving up. But we want it to look a little bit more fluid, so what I will do is select both of these and hit F9 on my keyboard. So that sets easy ease keys. That sounds really weird. Easy ease keys. And it will just give it a little bit more fluid movement. Just like that. Which is working for now, and we can tweak that a little bit more later. So if we go back into our logo animation, you can see this raising up just like that. And if we want to move this whole animation back and forth, if we don't want that to happen until later, we can just move this whole composition backwards in time. Now, because this is a tutorial and we don't want it to go like an hour or something, I'm not going to go into all the little tweaks, especially because on this logo, when we do one animation to, say, one of the rings, we actually have the exact same kind of animation on the other ring. So I don't need to make that same animation and you watch all of that. So I'm really just going to show you how it's done, and then you can tweak that yourself and experiment with that kind of technique yourself. So the next thing I want to do, and we'll go to our example here, is have these rings kind of fly up. So first things first, let's hide our rings because we're just going to deal with the circles right now. And now let's select all of our circles and hit scale, or S on our keyboard for scale, and hit the keyframe and move forward in time. And we'll hit another keyframe and we'll move back in time, and we'll just move all of these down to 0. And if I just type in 0, all of these will adjust to 0. So now if I hit play, they're all scaling at the same rate. Well, we don't necessarily want that, and it's moving a little bit slow. So to fix the slowness, we're going to grab these end keyframes, bring them in, and that'll speed things up just a bit. And now, if we select all these keyframes and go F9, now it'll be a little bit more fluid. So what I like to do is I like to select my keyframes. So I'm going to select all of them in this case and go up to my graph editor. And this will just give you more of a little bit of an interesting movement. So if I hit like these beginning keyframes and select all of those and then just pull this. So now what this is showing is at this point it's going to move extremely fast, but as time goes on, the movement is going to be much slower. So at the beginning, it starts out slow, goes much faster, and then slows down. So let's see what that looks like. All right, so now let's stagger these. So we're going to make the large one go first, kind of bring the medium one a little later, and the small one after that. There we go. All right, so now we have that animation going for us. So let's bring in our rings. So let's start with ring 1, and let's turn that on first of all. And once the back circle is revealed, so maybe about there, we are going to start to animate this guy on. So if we go under our ring 1, hit add and trim paths. So now we have this control where we can trim this path. So let's start where it's completely gone and hit the start keyframe and go forward a bit in time and bring it all the way back. And I'm going to do the same thing I've been doing, which is select those and hit F9 to easy ease. And basically, I'm going to do that exact same thing on all of the others. All right, so this is what we have. And obviously, the timings can be tweaked and stuff, and we're not going to really dive into that because, like I said, this is a tutorial, and you can definitely perfect that when you're actually doing your logo animations for your church. But this is the basics on how you create a logo animation within After Effects.
That was so easy, I think even Ronald could do that. If you want to see more After Effects tutorials or just general video production tips for church, you should subscribe to Sam's channel, SmartDeZign.church. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I will see you back here next week.
See ya.